So I just want to talk with us about the meditation, and then we're going to do the meditation, and then in the message we'll talk about what we did in meditation. That's a public speaking rule, if you choose to follow it. First you tell them what you're going to tell them, and then you tell them, and then you tell them what you told them. Because repetition in teaching is very important, right? So, again, Mr. Rogers, thank you for living in the world and bringing us your beautiful self. In the film, he demonstrated what we're getting ready to do. When he asked his companion over a meal, he didn't stop to pray, but he said, let's just take a minute, 1 minute, to feel gratitude for all the people in our lives who have helped us get to this point and helped to grow and deepen and expand this. Isn't that beautiful? And the whole restaurant stopped. It's great. We highly recommend that film. So meditation has been described as the quantum bridge between all that's possible in our minds and hearts and what becomes real in the world. So what we're meditating on today is gratitude. And all the research shows, after many years of being told that we don't form new brain cells, in fact we do. We also form new neural pathways, which is what this graphic represents. We're forming new neural pathways, and we want to make sure that the neural pathways we're forming are positive and life-affirming and healthy. So today, gratitude helps us to do that, helps us to form these new neural pathways. And I know as a species, we've been trained to complain. Trained to complain. Or am I the only one who got that? So it takes a conscious decision to let our neural pathways form in life-affirming ways, and gratitude's one of them. So this is what we're going to do in our meditation. It comes from a system called Heart Math, but simply, I don't know that Mr. Rogers knew about Heart Math, but this is what he did. First, we're going to focus on our hearts. That's a good place to focus, right? Focus on our hearts. And then we're going to breathe as if we are breathing from our hearts. Takes the breath from being the shallow breath to the deep breath. And then we're going to activate a rejuvenating feeling by appreciating or caring for someone or something in our lives. It can be an individual, living in physical or living in non-physical. It can be a teacher, a friend, our partners, our spouses, our community. It can be a four-legged. Something about which you care and something that you appreciate, grateful that this person or this something has been in your life. And then we're simply going to keep breathing and keep embracing this feeling of gratitude. Does that sound good? Okay, it's easy. Okay, now we're going to dim those lights. Okay. Let's all take a deep breath. And focus on our beautiful hearts, our hearts that are beating for us and moving oxygen through our bodies, our hearts that are bringing life, that river of life that the great ones have talked about. And let us imagine that we are breathing from our hearts, our deep breaths. As the song said, breathing in and breathing out, breathing through our hearts. And now I invite each one of us to feel gratitude for one individual or many, for one something in our lives, or many somethings, many blessings. Deepen into a feeling of gratitude and appreciation. Might be the time that you held a newborn baby or a puppy. Might be the four-legged in your life right now. Just keep breathing into that feeling of gratitude. others, just bring your mind back to the heart, to the breath, and to the feeling of appreciation. And we'll take a few moments of silence as we do this. Continue to breathe into that gratitude. We bless all those that we're holding in our hearts and thinking of, wherever they are, near and far, living in physical, living in non-physical. We bless all that has blessed us. And let that gratitude expand out into our world. Gratitude for the trees, the gardens, the national parks, the rivers, the oceans, the air, the minerals, the four-leggeds, the winged ones. We bless all people, our species, all the beautiful colors and faith traditions. Our global family, we give thanks to be a part of an evolving species. We're not done yet. We're still growing and deepening, expanding our perspectives. In this moment, we let ourselves be transformed by the renewing of our minds, forming new neural pathways that are life-affirming, strengthening, neural pathways that help us to be a helping presence in this world. And in this next few moments, if you would like to say a word or a name, someone or something about which you're grateful, please speak it out that we can hear you. Grateful for Gypsy and Sasha. Grateful for our school teachers. Grateful for the children that bring us new awareness. And we take another deep breath of gratitude and appreciation, and as the lights come up, as our eyes open, I invite you to turn to someone near you and say, I am living in gratitude. Living in gratitude. Living in gratitude. So we are an adorable species, right? And sometimes somebody asks you, how are you doing? And do you pull out your list of the things that you're working on and dealing with? I know someone who, when I say, how are you doing? She simply says, living in gratitude. And that is such a teaching and such a call back to my right mind. we have so much to be grateful for all the time, not just the Sunday before Thanksgiving. But it is a powerful, powerful energy of transformation when we give ourselves over to it. We know hard things happen. Charlene and I get the calls and the emails, and there are people right now who are having some really hard things going on. We hold them in our hearts and in our prayers. There are people who are suffering. We all have suffered, am I right? So even in the midst of struggles and even in the midst of times that feel dark or hard, there is a place within us that can be in gratitude for so many blessings in our lives. And then we become what we call a helping presence. Is that something we think might be good to practice more of? Do you think it helps to shift the energy of our world that has its struggles? To be in gratitude. Well, that was the right answer, so we shall continue. So we're contemplating gratitude. I love the word contemplation. It has the word temple in it. I am within my own temple. The Holy of Holies, the true Holy of Holies. Yes, it was a part of the temple in the Holy Land. The true Holy of Holies is within our heart, through which we were just breathing. So when we're contemplating anything, we are in the deepness of ourselves. True contemplation is a meditative process. So within the temple of our own hearts, we contemplate gratitude. So this is a wonderful story in the book of Acts in the Bible, where Paul and Silas, two disciples of Jesus, and most importantly, Paul, who had been a killer of those practicing the new way. They weren't known as Christians back then. Jesus never called himself a Christian. They called it the what? The new way. So Paul and Silas were disciples of the new way, and there were those in the land who were putting in jail and actually killing those who were teaching the new way. Have you ever noticed when you came into your new consciousness, your transformed consciousness, you started living from a different way of being in the world, and those closest to you said, I don't believe this for a second. I've known you since you were knee-high to a grasshopper, and I know who you are. And so as we practice the renewing of our mind, the transforming of ourselves through the renewing of our mind, have you noticed those people either drop away or they begin to recognize in you something they've never known before, and they pay a whole lot more attention. So, Paul and Silas were in prison. They were teaching the new way, and so they did something that we always do when we're in prison. They were singing and praising God. There used to be an old song we sang in the Pentecostal church. They were talking and singing and praising God, talking and singing and praising God. And that's when an earthquake hit. And the wall shook, and the chains came out of the wall, and they were free to go. You know, there's a Bob Sima song. Bob Sima, a lot of us love him. He sings, why do you stay in jail when the door is wide open? Now that's a good question for all of us to ask. Why do we stay in jail in the life-depleting thoughts? Why do we stay in jail in the unforgiving thoughts? Why do we stay in jail in the poor me thoughts when the door is wide open? So the guard came to Paul and Silas and said, why are you still in jail? The door's wide open. The earthquake just blew that jail apart. And the jailer was amazed. He said, why are you still here? The door's wide open. And they answered, well, we didn't want you to get in trouble because you're in charge of us. He said, oh, go. Just go. Because he perceived that their praising and their gratitude to the God of their understanding is what brought the earthquake. Now, I can't prove that. But how many of us have had life experiences where we were in jail, either literally or metaphorically, and something set us free? A new idea, a way of being that we became familiar with, a new idea about who we are and why we're here. Something sets us free. There's no hands. None of you have had that experience? Praising and singing and giving thanks. And then there's this wonderful story where there's several stories in the Bible where Jesus fed the multitudes, where there was just a little bit of food brought by a child, which is another metaphysical teaching about the consciousness within us that's pure and unaffected by fear, brings to us the kernel of prosperous thinking, brings to us the kernel of miraculous thinking. The little child brought the food and said, "Here, I'll share this." And Jesus said, "Okay, I can work with that. I can work with that little bit." And what did he do first? He blessed it and he gave thanks for it. And you know the rest of the story. Then they just started handing out so much food that there was food left over. Have you ever had that experience? We have in our seminars. Not enough food. And everybody gets fed and we go back to, "Oh my gosh, the bowl's still full of food." How did that happen? The miraculous events where we didn't think there was enough, and then there is. And there's even prosperity to spare and share at the end of it. We can call that a miracle, or we can call it the way it's supposed to be. So Charles Fillmore said this: "We all intuitively know that there is something wrong in a world where poverty, suffering, and sorrow prevail." Charles Fillmore is our co-founder of this unity movement. He says, "We would not, any of us, consciously create such a world." Now, we could just teach all day long on just that. We would not consciously create a world of sorrow, would we? Nope. And yet, Fillmore surmised that spiritual forces, we might say miraculous events, act through or unfold through our high consciousness thoughts, our exalted thoughts. And the famous phrase was, "Thoughts held in mind create after their kind." So let's just take a moment. What thoughts are we holding this morning in our mind? Because this afternoon you'll have more of that. So we might want to do a little tweaking, right? I heard someone saying this, "Well, I can't believe I decided to have people over for Thanksgiving. Now I have to clean and I have to cook." And I said, "Okay, so how many are coming?" You know, she said about 12. I said, "Wow, you have 12 friends around your table at Thanksgiving." And she said, "Yes." You see how we do that? Right. We're adorable. So, this guy said something really important in 2001 after 9/11. The leader at that time of the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota nations, Chief Looking Horse, he said, "Each of us is put here in this time and this place to personally decide the future of humankind. Did you think you were put here for something less?" Paula's not here to make any comment. I just want to invite you to consider this is a real question put to all of us. It's a huge reminder because some of us talk ourselves into thinking that our life has no purpose, and I promise you, your life has holy purpose. And part of it is stated here. You are put here in this time and in this place to personally decide the future of humankind. And we might say, "Me? How can I do that? I'm just so little." Very, very little. In fact, our consciousness is huge. In the privacy of our own home and our own little recliner, we can impact the wellness of the world. met someone on the Taos Pueblo in Taos, New Mexico, who told us that there had been someone in the kiva praying for over 1,000 years. Not the same person, but there had been a presence in the kiva nonstop. That is their story, that for 1,000 years they've been praying for our species. And for our species to get our minds right, meaning our minds and our hearts working together. Working together. So did we think we were here for something less?
No.
Thank you for that. God, no. No. We are put here in this time and place to do what? Shine our light, be a helping presence, to be a presence of love, to give love, receive love, to help create hope, to say to one another, don't quit. Don't quit knowing who you are. Don't quit knowing your magnificence. Don't quit knowing you're the light of the world. Don't give up now. We are evolving together. We're not done yet. We're just not done yet. So when we do something wacky, when we see someone or some group in our species out of their right mind, we know for them who they are until they remember. I know many of you are doing that for me. Holding her in prayer till she knows who she is, because she's forgotten right now. I started to say by a show of hands, how many of you have been in jail? I love this group. The first time I was arrested, it was underage drinking the night before my boyfriend went to Vietnam, and in Florida they had switched back and forth between 18 and 21, and suddenly we were underage again. And my hairdresser, who was also the bouncer at the bar, he let us in. And we had a round of drinks with two of our friends who were headed off to Vietnam the next morning. Can you imagine arresting kids for having a drink the night before they're going to Vietnam? Come on. Well, they put me in my jail cell. And I have to tell you, I will never forget the sound of the door closing. I felt so sad and so scared and so hopeless. And I give such great thanks for my dad, Grady Henry, who showed up to bail me out, helped me work through that whole process of getting my record expunged. He never made me feel bad about myself. He never made me feel less than. He was ranting and raving about the idea that they would arrest us the night before two of us were going to Vietnam. He was right there with me. I just love that. I didn't get in trouble. He was my advocate, and he was my ally. And the sound of that door closing is still in my memory, and it's in my body memory. I remember the shudder that went through my body as I realized I'm no longer free. I can't leave here. And I think about that a lot, about people who are in prison rightly or wrongly, people who are being held in detention rightly or wrongly, people right now who are sitting in crowded places with this immigration mess that we're experiencing. It's not a good feeling. It's a hopeless feeling. So I ask us again, in our thoughts, in our prayers, why do we stay in jail when the door's wide open? Because that was a literal jail cell, but I've also been imprisoned in my own mind over thoughts of fear, or lack, or uncertainty, or unforgiveness, Haven't you? Yes. So these are the questions we ask ourselves. Do we think we're put here for something less than being this light of the world for helping to shape the future of humankind? And if you think that's too lofty of an idea, I say hold on, because you're going to get it any second. It's not a lofty idea. It's the assignment to our spirit of why we're here. It's the holy assignment. So, Stephen Levine, Buddhist teacher, said, you have to be meta-rational to open your ordinary mind to experience your extraordinary heart. You have to go outside rational thinking. You have to color outside the lines. You have to widen the frame, make the perspective more huge. Be willing to see more. Eyes to see, ears to hear, hearts to understand. Be willing to know that you don't know everything. And there's more to be seen. So we have to be meta-rational, meta-logical. Go beyond what the norm says. Expand the picture. Because otherwise we won't know our extraordinary hearts. We won't know them. In Book Group Wednesday, we were talking about all the great ones have said, know yourself and what? You'll know God. Know yourself and you'll know God. So if you feel you're still in jail in your consciousness, just take a deep breath and be willing to see a bigger picture. Be willing to live outside of the imprisoned thinking. Be willing to step outside the jail cell. Greg Braden, another book we've studied here, Resilience of the Heart, he asks this question, is it possible to live each day in a resilient frame of mind that softens the impact of dramatic change? Would you say we're having some dramatic changes in the world? Is it possible to stay resilient in our thinking, in our minds, and our hearts as we maneuver our way through the evolution of our species? Is it possible? Oh God, I hope so. It's a very important question. So gratitude grows extraordinary consciousness. Turn to somebody and say that. Gratitude grows extraordinary consciousness. Let's keep reading this together. It increases revelation, increases understanding, increases ability to see the big picture, and to act from that larger view. So if we know gratitude expands the picture, if we know gratitude increases revelation, if we know that gratitude increases understanding, then why wouldn't we go there more often? Again, we've been trained to complain. We are an adorable species. Get in an elevator, the first one to speak is usually about what the weather's not doing, whatever you want it to be doing. Play a game. Meet every complaint with some kind of positive, transformative idea. See how long or how quickly that person wants to get out of the elevator. It's a practice. It's a spiritual practice. I want to be in gratitude right now for something that happened in here Wednesday night. We reprised the third Wednesday healing evenings. We had meditation, we had hands-on healing, and we had Reiki going on in here. That room is charged with healing energy. And Dawn and Joanne have started doing the Reiki here again. So third Wednesday. But I want to be in gratitude for the ones who were leading the evening and also the ones who came. The energy just built and built and deepened and deepened. And it was a powerful moment. And those kinds of healing events open our hearts. But here's the good news. We can be in that kind of open consciousness anytime, anywhere, any place, even at the DMV. Opening our hearts. Setting ourselves free, getting out of that jail consciousness. Is that a good thing to do? Yes. Yeah. So, Anthony Machado, y'all know him, Spanish poet, he said, last night I dreamed, last delusion, that I life here in my heart, and that the golden bees were making white combs and sweet honey from my old failures. Is that great?
Yeah.
Because some of our complaints come from things we think we didn't do well enough, from the regrets, from what we think someone did or didn't do in our lives that made us unhappy. Our old failures, where we thought something was going to unfold in one way and then it didn't. And we feel like we failed. Something didn't happen quickly enough. We've all got those. And yet, when we set ourselves free from jail consciousness, we begin to understand that everything in our lives helped to create the magnificence of who we are. That is a glorious consciousness. That is a place of awakening. You mean even that time that I was in jail? Yes. It opened my heart to compassion for all those who have to spend any moment at all in prison. Literal or metaphorical. What opens our hearts? What opens our hearts? Forgiveness.
Imagination.
What?
Love.
Imagination, love, compassion, tolerance, empathy, being positive, understanding. What opens our hearts? Surrender. Music.
Acceptance.
Acceptance.
Patience.
Compassion. We know the keys to the puzzle. We've spoken, many of them here. What keeps our hearts open? What keeps us out of jail consciousness? Unity. You know, I finally understand what Fillmore was talking about when he chose to name this movement Unity. He didn't know it was going to be a movement. You know, there was never supposed to be churches or ministers, y'all. It's just simply little study groups. He was not an ordained minister. He studied all the great world religions and developed these ideas of unity. The idea of unity, that we are one with the one presence, the one power, known by many names. We are one with, we are in unity with this one presence, this one power. And we are in oneness with one another. We're in oneness with all life. It wasn't a new idea. It's an idea that goes throughout all the great faith traditions. This idea of unity. Jesus said, I and the Father are one. Same thing. I am one with this consciousness, this one power, this one presence. Unity. So let's take a deep breath. When we find ourselves in jail, when we find ourselves imprisoned in some old thought, some old wound, some old idea about who we are or who we are not, when we find ourselves in that jail thinking, we are invited to remember and to see and understand the door is wide open. It's absolutely open. We make a decision to set ourselves free in our consciousness, in our hearts. We are free to be a helping presence in the world. We are free to know ourselves as the light of the world. We are free to be a forgiving, compassionate, empathetic species. We are free to be the light. The door's wide open. Please turn to someone and say, you are free to be the light.